try and understand the value in the eyes of your buyer. I think far too many times as vendors, we think there's intrinsic value because it costs us much to produce, or we think it looks like that. It's trying to understand from a buying perspective, what is the value you're providing?
Coffee's for closers only.
So we've established my proposal is sound in principle. Now we're just haggling over price.
Let's see how much we're going for on eBay.
I mean, it's the same as Dunkin' Donuts. Costs 15 times the price.
Welcome to Impact Pricing, the podcast where we discuss pricing, value, and the enigmatic relationship between them. I'm Mark Stiving, and I run boot camps to help companies get paid more. Our guest today is Mr. Mark Herring. Here are 3 things you want to know about Mark before we start. He is the Chief Marketing Officer at HiveMQ. He's held the role of CMO at several other organizations as well. As you dig back into his history, he was a VP at Sun Microsystems, and he even was a product manager at Oracle. So he's been at all the really cool places. Welcome, Mark.
Hey, appreciate it, Mark. And, good to be here with you, and appreciate the kind words.
Oh, no worries. So Mark was recently a client of mine, and I really love the guy, super smart. So I can't wait to hear how he thinks about value and pricing and how he's going to help us. But Mark, I know this doesn't fit you perfectly, but let me ask you the question. How did you get into pricing?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? So I'd say from a role in marketing, and it's started life as a developer, but then got into product marketing, and usually pricing fits somewhere there. Going, what should we charge for this product? And it gets into a whole thing of in a lot of ways you reflect back, what is the value? So yes, when I was at if I just think of my career at Oracle, we sort of had more of an enterprise audience, and we started looking at what are people willing to spend, right? And it's been a journey since then, right? I think the whole idea of pricing based on value, I think, has become more. I feel like we've always done it in the back of our brain, but I think it's become a lot more to the forefront, and especially sort of working with you, it's become a lot more of a thing focus on. Let's focus on the value. But I can remember sort of one of my first times going out, and we used to do this was at Oracle and a couple of startups. We used to go out on the road and basically and pitch a pre-release of a product. So this was basically fail fast before fail fast became fashionable. And we called it a market validation journey, right? And we would go in and pitch a product, show the demo, and then ask the customer, so what do you think you'd pay for this, right? What problem is it solving? And I can't say we ever got like a consistent answer, but it did. We knew whether it was going to cost, as much as a loaf of bread or as much as a car. Like, it gave us sort of buckets to think about. And that was sort of the journey into pricing. I've definitely priced enterprise products. At HiveMQ, we sort of have a couple of enterprise products. We also have PLG, which I think that has a lot quicker way of knowing whether you hit the price right or wrong. Whereas the enterprise motion is like, well, did you show enough value? So it's a fascinating topic. And Mark, you're the first pricing coach I worked with that's got a PhD. So we've have to make this up to now, man.
It's fun. So what I found fascinating is you said, as a product manager, or really early on, you went out and did willingness to pay studies, which is really good. And you slipped in the comment that said we would ask them, what problem does it solve? So I want to ask you, did you really ask that question, or is that something that you just said?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we asked them the question going, hey, we're producing this stuff, how would you use it? We probably didn't use the word, which problem does it solve? I think we probably more use, how would you use it? So we weren't asking we're trying to get from A to B. It's like, hey, would you buy my car? Would you use this? Yeah. And we then probably asked them, so why, right? And so one of the, probably one of the products I first of all ever priced was an IDE, sort of a development environment, and it was like, okay, and we were discussing going, and it got down into would this make your developers more productive, and would they use it? And we probably never went to the next thing going, say, hey, how much time are you saving per developer? Which is probably where I've evolved my thinking to now. But it was around that type of thing. We wouldn't just slap and going, competitive pricing is, probably $199 a developer at that stage. Do you think it's worth more or less than that? We didn't do that. We sort of stayed away from the using competitors to price our product. But those are roughly the questions we sort of asked.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so you've been in. Actually, I'm going to ask you a really embarrassing question.
Yeah, long time.
That's actually not the embarrassing part.
Oh, okay.
Here's the embarrassing part. I once heard that an average tenure for a CMO was like a year and a half. Is this a true statement? And can you tell me why?
It's a true statement, and especially in the, I think definitely consumer goods. Like, so if you look at sort of any sort of consumer goods, I think you see a lot of turnover there. On the enterprise B2B space, which is sort of my neck of the world, I don't know what the real stat is. I think it's 18 months to 2 years, and it usually goes something like this. A little bit of tongue in cheek, in case people don't understand my sense of humor, is if you're not making your numbers, it's either the CRO's problem or the CMO's problem. So the first one is if someone's not producing pipeline, it's a CMO problem. So you get rid of them. And if you're not producing revenue, it's a CRO problem. So, if you don't get hit the first round, you always have the second round to come your way. So I think that's how the averages work. But it's, I think in all honesty, it's a little bit like that in startup land. You've got to be able to show your value to the organization, obviously not around pricing, but just, value to the organization. And, CROs have got to bring in the money, and CMOs have got to bring in the pipeline. And I think that's sort of maybe in the last 10 years is sort of a new phenomenon. It's not marketing and not sort of, I don't know, madmen sitting in a smoky room, thinking about the next bit of creative copy. It's a lot more, just data driven. And so I think it's hard to hide behind the data if you're not able to deliver pipeline.
Okay, so let's dig into that.
Yeah.
How do you deliver pipeline? And as you know, one of my favorite things to talk about is value.
Yep.
So how does value fit into delivering pipeline?
Yeah, it's a great question. So first of all, let's define pipeline. Pipeline to me is, you're finding someone out there. Let's call them a lead or a person, right? Or, obviously, usually a person might be associated with a company that you solve some problem for, that your sales team believes that they have a propensity to buy within a certain period, right? So, pipeline is very much, I've qualified that this person has some money, they like what we're giving them, and I haven't sold it yet to them, but they actually have, got the desire to buy it. So in some ways, looking at I'll use just maybe a dumb analogy, but I think it's an analogy nonetheless. It's you go into a car dealership and you go and say, yep, okay, this guy Mark actually wants to buy a car. He wants to buy it in 6 to 9 months. It's up to us to go and sell him the car, right? In terms of, is he going to buy a car from us or from the competitive? That to us is pipeline. It's someone that's actually being qualified. And so they've got to have seen some value to get to actually click always, especially in enterprise B2B space, there's a button on everyone's website and it says speak to Satan. It doesn't really say that. It says contact sales, right? And they've got to have enough desire to click on that. And, and especially speaking to technical audiences, I can see them shaking as they're about to push the button. So they've got to see that it solves a real problem. Whether it has value is usually further in the sales cycle for us. So like you can describe some value statements on the website, but for them, I think a lot of them are, they're coming in through the website, and then we can sort of flip it to going, we create pipeline just going and outbounding, but it's a little different. But inbounding, right? Let's take the inbound one. Is it solving some type of problem? They sort of on a journey of going, yeah, I think this could solve my problem for me. I need to find out what it's going to cost. And are they hiding this, what the cost is? They want me to speak to them. And so they come in and click through that. And I think when they then in front of the salesperson, which is usually their first interaction, and whether that's, in our particular case, it goes to a business development rep first, to sort of qualify. But you're starting to ask questions then and going, why do you need this? What do you want it for? And I think you're starting to start down the value conversation. However, there's a complete other side of the world where you're having dinner at night and the phone rings and you make a mistake and you pick it up and there's this real friendly person that says, hey, Mark, I've got something to sell you. I mean, they're a lot better than that. And this is what we call outbounding. And I think there you've got to get to more value a lot quicker because you've got probably 15 seconds to get their attention. So, again, it's, what, might be something fairly simple is like, what is the cost of downtime in your organization? Like we sell a lot to factories, and downtime or predictive maintenance are sort of hot issues for them, but you're trying to go and say, hey, what's the cost from you, or what's the revenue we can save you, right? So it's really either some type of increased revenue, reduce cost, and for some of our pharma customers in pharmaceuticals, not farmers and pharma PH, it's a lot more in risk mitigation. Like, hey, what's the cost of an FDA audit for you? And so you're having to land that problem really quickly, and sort of the value that I always like to say, I like to sell via my other customers. I always want to go and say, if I'm calling into a pharmaceutical company, I'm going to always going with, we did this for Eli Lilly. It's a good name, and people, I better listen to you. Or we did this for FedEx, we did this for UPS, or we did this, but you're describing your problem not like, hey, what we are is an MQTT broker that does a really good job of pub sub. You'll lose them. You've got to go and say, I got to hook them with. There's some value statement of, what's the cost of downtime for you, or even, what's the cost of some regulatory compliance. And so I think it depends on whether they come through the inbound bucket or the outbound.
Okay, you just gave us like 100 things to talk about.
I know, man. I got plenty here, Mark. You know me. What the audience doesn't know is that we can talk for hours, so that's problematic. Right. And we're not going to, I know.
So one of the things you didn't mention as we were talking about the whole process is you didn't say the words MQL and SQL.
Nope.
Right? Marketing qualified lead and sales qualified lead. Do you not use those, or are those not important to you, or where does pipeline fit into that?
So it's like, to me, it's like doing a race, right? You're going to go and train for a marathon, and your goal is to probably finish the marathon in a certain time. I'm going to run this marathon in 3 hours. And to me, that's the equivalent of pipeline. It's something I want to go and do, and it's the outcome that I really want to go and achieve is run this marathon. In order to run the marathon, you probably need to go to the gym a couple of times a week. You probably need to be able to do a couple of 1 mile races, 5 mile races, and get it up. And all of those to me are just stepping stones on your goal. And those would be the equivalent of MQLs and SQLs. We track them, we monitor them, we look at all the conversions between each one of them. But honestly, if you're making pipeline, no one cares, right? And so, I've been at startups where despite ourselves, we bring in pipeline. I mean, we could have completely broken processes, and I've been in others where we never got to pipeline and we had best MQLs, SQLs, and you argue the whole time. But I think it's, I think the marathon analogy a lot, just going, if you're able to achieve your marathon in your timeline, right? I'm also so big into measuring, not just did I run a marathon. It's usually you want to marathon. Some people are just, I want to finish a marathon. That's a particular time as well.
It's a goal.
And so if I look at that to me is equivalent of pipeline. It's like pipeline is someone comes in that wants some of our stuff.
So what is the difference between SQL and pipeline?
Yeah.
Is pipeline meaning that we want you, or is pipeline meaning we're going to buy something?
So the way I look at it is, so SQL would be a sales qualified lead, right? Is someone that's come in from a demographic that you can sell to, right? So in other words, like, you're available in these couple of regions. And so it's qualified from a sales perspective going, yes, it's in this region. We're speaking to the right person. We're not speaking to the janitor, unless you're saying janitorial supplies, but I'm speaking to the right person. And they've got maybe a propensity to buy it. When it becomes a pipeline, is you've gone to the next step. You've gone to the next step to go and say, hey, is there access to budget? So if I'm speaking to you, Mark, before I convert you into a real opportunity, into pipeline, I go and say, so Mark, do you have a budget for this? And you go, no. And you might have been qualified all the way there till you said the word no. Then I'm going to ask you, well, do you have access to a budget? Do you guys spend money on software at all? If you're yes, but you need to speak to Bob, I go, well, let's bring Bob into this. So before I flip you to real pipeline, I want to have at least made sure that there is, in HiveMQ's instance, and every company is slightly different, we're always looking at about a less than 9-month bucket. So you don't have a budget to go and buy tomorrow. But if you have a way of, yes, I want to go and actually make a purchase decision in 9 months, then you would sort of flip there. And so it's sort of this judgment call where you sort of closing the gates down a little. And so, I think in some ways, I never run a car dealership, but I sort of always love thinking about these analogies. I go, you come into the car dealer and, you've got some money, you look like, you're looking for a car and that something that might be an SQL, right? Okay, here's a qualified lead. You met the salesperson and all the rest. And the only time you become a real opportunity is when you've done the test drive and you go, okay, yes, I'm in there. You've shown a little bit more willingness than just going, sales feels you qualified. To me, the qualified lead is, MQLs marketing feels you qualified, and we feel a lot of things are qualified, right? Sales goes, little more criteria. Sales is qualified, and opportunity is there's something real here, right? And they're going to go and monitor and track it.
Yep. Okay, so now the hard question. Oh, actually, how do you ever get someone to answer a cold call? I got to tell you that I never, ever answer my phone. If your name didn't come up, I'm not answering the phone, right? Period.
Yeah.
If for some reason I accidentally did and you started to say anything, I'm hanging up on you.
Yeah. Yeah. There's lonelier people than you, Mark, out there that want to talk to someone. No, I don't think it's that. I think it's, so it's a numbers game. It's a bit like, the one thing you didn't mention in my past, I did spend 2 years actually running a painting company, physical painting, right? And it taught me a lot of things that I now apply to business. And this is, we won't go down too deep on that one. But the thing we did there is direct mail. And if you think that people don't answer phone calls, you think, who opens, junk mail, as it's called? We call it direct mail. And if in the marketing, what's direct mail? Like, who opens it? No one does. Well, I tell you that statistically, it's about 0.1% of the population that opens it. And if you send out enough, it becomes relevant, right? Because there is the demographic that's not you that you're selling to that actually does open it. So, like it's my example, and maybe in the painting business, which obviously it got nothing to do with HiveMQ, but the people that opened it primarily were retired people. They liked getting junk mail. They didn't know they liked it, but they read it, right? And it's the same thing. If I think of like HiveMQ, like why do people pick up the phone when we call them, right? It's not always through the phone, right? You might have picked it up through LinkedIn. You might have commented to something there. You might have been sort of following us on LinkedIn, or you're following one of the influencers that are out there. And I come up to you and say, Mark, hey, Mark, I see you know this guy, Mark Herring. Could we have a chat about it? You go like, oh yeah, I'm interested to talk about that because I'm interested in wah, right? And I think it's that. It's you have to go and be a little more creative than just it's only a cold phone call, right? It might be a couple of cold emails, a LinkedIn in request, and then you pick up the phone and go, hey, this is Mark from HiveMQ. Oh, I was just reading about you guys. You know what? And so it's cold because you've never had the interaction, but usually they've interacted somewhere with you, right? It's like they might have seen you at an event, or they might have seen some of your outreach to you already and going, okay, I'll give this guy a bone, right? And so for me personally, just sort of my I also I very seldom pick up the phone, and I've been caught a couple of times. But so if you looked at my LinkedIn profile, there's a picture of me on, it looks like a beach, and I have a dog. And anyone that uses LinkedIn and comes to me and tells me where that photograph is, and with AI, it's so much easier today. I actually will respond to them, tell them, great job. Now I can have a conversation with me, even if because it's just, they've done their work. I feel like you've done their work and I'm just a softie on that stuff. I go, hey, yeah. And for those of you that are checking it out, it's Lake Powell, and it's with the dog on Lake Powell. And so people can say, hey, how's your dog doing? How was Lake Powell? Love Lake Powell. Even if they don't, I will always respond to that email, right? And if they called and said, hey, I'm talking to you about Lake Powell, I go, Lake Powell? Yeah, I'm into Lake Powell. Oh, you're selling me technology stuff. But no, yes.
But what's so cool about that, and by the way, I love that, right? What's so cool about that is that if someone knows and looks up, hey, this is Lake Powell, they've at least spent time looking at you.
Yes.
Right? It isn't just hey, here's one of 7,000 emails I sent out today.
Correct. Yeah. And I think those are the ones that have a better, and I think, probably, I think statistically you got 15 seconds to try and get to someone before they hang up the phone, right? And I'm also not a big believer in these auto dialers, because as soon as I hear hello and there's this pause, I go, I got you before you got through to me, right? And again, it might just be statistically that people actually do better at the stuff. But yes, I think you want to feel that someone's taken a little bit of that creativity to understand you, maybe looked at your background and can at least then articulate their company message based on what they think about you, right? Because it's like, even like, I'll take, HiveMQ is a good example. If we're phoning into a plant manager versus an IT architect, we have different stories for them, right? The plant manager is probably more worried about maybe uptime or visibility. And your IT architect is more like, hey, does this actually hook up to all my other systems, right? And so you've got to know who that persona is. But I think, again, sort of one of the sales guys was talking about this at the conference we were at together, Mark, and I just loved it. And he's like, don't over-research, because there's never a good time to know everything, because you got to keep on dialing, right? So yes, you can't stop doing it, because it is it's like getting dice and trying to get the six. The more you throw it, the better chance you're going to get to the six, right? So yeah, it's just more than 6 sides on this die.
Okay, and so now you personally have called. I pick up the phone. I'm an operations manager. You've got 15 seconds. What are you saying in 15 seconds that keeps me from hanging up?
Yeah. Let me ask one clarifying question. Operations manager where? Manufacturing plant or, yeah.
Manufacturing.
Yeah. I would say, hey, Mark, I work with companies like Magna and BMW with their manufacturing. You're interested to hear what we do? I lead with brands because I go, oh, you might have something to talk to me about. Not value.
It's okay. So that's not horrible, but I wish it had value in it.
I know it's when you say, oh, because to me, the response I usually get for this thing is a pause and go, okay. And then I'd come back and saying, what we solve for them is we move them from 4 nines to 5 nines and save them about $10 million. Is that interesting to you? Because then I move it to value, because now I've forced a pause in the conversation where I've thrown you a little off, because no one usually starts that way, right? They usually start with the value going, hey, we can save you $10 million, and I've tuned out. But I go and say, I always love, the SDR team reports to me, so I sort of have an inside passion for a lot of this. I also love it when people try and get rid of me, right? In terms of going, okay, yeah. And I always then land back to, and we're just very lucky as a company. We've got some really large brand names that use us. But, it's like, if you sort of, again, sort of, let's say a manufacturing company and, and you're about to leave, and I'd say, well, oh, gee, Mark, I'm just surprised, man. Mercedes-Benz uses us and you would never use us? You got to have some of that little, I don't know, swagger, right? You got to be a little, I don't know, cocky maybe is the wrong word, but I think that you've got to, I think if you start value too soon, if you haven't sort of, and you're starting value at that second sentence, right? It's not 12 sentences in, right? But if you don't, you've got to because people are just want to, that they've answered the call and like, oh my God, I shouldn't have done this. I want to get off the phone. And when you do that type of thing, I think they're then shocked going, oh, he didn't do a sales pitch on me. He's asking me about these companies. Yeah. Well, maybe it is something interesting, right? Because people want to be part of the crowd. FOMO, man.
Yeah. So I was going to say exactly that, right? It's FOMO and it's brand or credibility building for you.
Yes.
Right. That says, hey, look, we work with these other big clients.
Correct.
Yeah. Can we just talk about what we might do for you? Exactly.
And it's trying to get out of the whole, hey, we got the best broker in the industry and it scales to 200 million devices. Are you interested? It's like, wah, thank you, goodbye. Right. Yeah, exactly. Even though that might be a huge criteria for you as we get down in our journey, that might be one of the most important things to you is scalability, but I'd never start there.
Yeah. Okay. So on a cold call, I could go with that. By the way, I'm not an expert. I have no idea what works, what doesn't work. So
I can just tell you, it's like, well, and I think it's a stylistic, right? I think not everyone on my sort of team would use the same type of thing. I mean, it's like, it's also, you got to be comfortable in, keeping the conversation. I just find that it just could be and I've always had this crutch, right? It's like, I rather love to tell the story of what we've done for others than just tell you generically what we've done. I feel like, hey, we've got some big brand names. Why not use those as the door opener as opposed to just a pure value statement?
Yeah. Okay. What's the email look like? You're going to send me a cold email.
Yeah. So let me tell you my email story so it goes back and for the audience, they might find this interesting. But it's my first gig as a CMO, and I was sitting down with our CRO and we say, let's write some cold email. And I'm very competitive, which you might have noticed when we worked together. But I said, okay, you write one and I'll write one, and we'll see who wins, right? And so I wrote the world's best marketing copy, right? Hey, we save you this value. Here's our things. We're the best at this. Here's customer references. And it was beautiful. It was, again, beautiful. And our CRO wrote the following subject: quick question. And the in the body was, what do you solve? What are you doing to solve MTTB? Mean time between failures, right? MTTF, right? That was it. And he beat me in about an hour. I just quit. I said, you win. Sent him out, took him out for beers, and so I think a lot of it is like you got to have the hook. I think email systems are becoming a lot clever now for like quick questions. Now it gets flagged by Google, usually into spam. And so you got to be a little bit of things like that. Maybe it can be, how can we help at company name or, first name? How can we help you? And so people look at this and go like, but it's got to be almost a 2-sentence thing where you're just trying to lean with them with enough going, would you be interested in learning how to reduce downtime? Are you worried about regulatory compliance? Like some of the things we solve so that they give you the permission. And so that's usually your first email, right? And then your second one, you can start layering on top of that, getting back to you. We've helped companies like this, this, and this. And you're starting to layer because they usually don't respond to the first one either, right? But it is and I think Gong has done a really good job. If you sort of look up their website, they have sort of like best cold emails and stuff, like they've done analysis on the stuff. And a lot of it is just these real little snippy, quick things to just land one little point in the door. You do long ones, people ignore it. We're a micro. I was going to say micro learnings, but it's probably more just dopamine addicted society. We're like, what's the quick thing? It used to be, what's my tweet? But whatever you're using now for your social media.
Okay. I've never done cold outreach on email, but I might write one and send it out just for kicks.
Just do it. Well, and what's great on a lot of things is tooling has come so far in the industry, right? I mean, so a lot of this, we're A/B testing everything, right? Send this one, send another one. So like when I started this, we didn't have a lot of sort of tooling. And so when CRO and I did this, we just knew who had the best open rates. Now you can actually go and do an A/B test on every single thing. And so it gets a lot more sophisticated. And we sort of do this internally and just compete. We have teams competing with each other to see who's winning. And then we all learn from that, right? And then the population changes, right? I mean, like I said, this probably 10 years ago, quick question was probably the most popular one. And I think, the spam filters are getting better at this stuff, right? And it doesn't go usually to junk. It goes into promotions and stuff like that. And so you've got to stay ahead of some of these things so that you don't find your way down into the abyss of no one even opened your email, right?
Yeah. All right, Mark, as you said, we could probably talk for hours, but we're going to have to wrap this up. Let me ask you the final question, and you only have a couple minutes to answer. You can't take like a half hour.
Okay, got it. Final question, half an hour. Yeah.
What is one piece of pricing advice you would give our listeners that you think could have a big impact on their business?
Great question. I think to try and understand I'm going to use the word value because we've talked about it, but the value in the eyes of your buyer, right? I think far too many times as vendors, we think there's intrinsic value because it costs us much to produce, or we think it looks like that. It's trying to understand from a buying perspective, what is the value you're providing, right? And I'll take sort of again to the car analogy, right? Because again, I love analogies, but a car gets you from point A to B. But you're selling different value when you're in the Ferrari dealership than you're in the VW dealership, right? Or in the Toyota dealership. each of those things gets you from A to B. But if you look at pricing there's something for the value you're providing in the Ferrari dealership to the buyer. And it's always at this, you've got to put your feet in the feet of the buyer. Is they're probably looking for some form of prestige, some sort of quality, some things like that. And you've got to be comfortable in your own, and this gets to a marketing thing, your own brand, right? So, if I look at HiveMQ, we definitely think we're a premium brand, right? So we actually do, we obviously price on value, but we also think we're a little higher on the value thing because we're more, we want the brand to stand for something. We want to stand for trust. We want to stand for premium. And so we want to price accordingly. And we want to make sure that the buyer understands it that way. So I think it's like you've got to be comfortable in your own shoes, but you've also got to flip it and go and say, I'm pricing what the buyer's looking for. And maybe just last bit of advice on that, and back to the car analogy, getting from point A to point B is usually not what people are paying for. That's not what they got the car. Yes, that's what they got the car to do, but that's not why they bought it.
Yep. Or at least that's not why they bought the one they bought.
Correct. Exactly.
Right.
Correct.
As they chose cars.
Yep.
So, Mark, I thought that was a brilliant answer. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it, Mark, and appreciate hanging out with you.
Hey, so if anybody wants to contact you, how can they do that?
Probably the easiest is just go to LinkedIn. It's just Herring Mark, because Mark Herring was taken. So Herring Mark. I think Mark Herring is a politician, so don't send him any stuff. Just off LinkedIn, or if you would contact me at work, it's just mark.herring@hivemq.com.
Excellent. And to our listeners, thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this, would you please leave us a rating and a review? And if you have any questions or comments about the podcast, or if your company needs help getting paid more for the value you deliver, feel free to email me, mark@impactpricing.com. Now, go make an impact.